What 10-year-old sports car should you buy? We think we found the answer. Hint, it's in the shot. Hey, welcome to After Drive. Okay, 10 years ago, cars were both engaging to drive and also becoming kind of modern. We hate to be nostalgic, but you know, we are, and with cars depreciating in the way they do, 10-year-old cars are sometimes the best way to get performance for the dollar. And Mike and Zach from Classic Car Club Manhattan are here today because we found a car that I think we've all driven, so it's kind of fits in with After Drive.
Yeah, actually talking about a car after we've driven it.
Yeah,
Amazing.
for the first time.
4 years in.
Pretty much ever.
Nailed it.
But, you know, the car that we found isn't a car that, I say we, but you guys found it.
Yeah, you had nothing to do with it.
I really had zero to do with it. Tell me about the Bmw Z4 M, and then this one, which is particularly awesome because it was tuned well.
Well, so Z4M, in my mind, I think was destined for this conversation the day they made it. When they built that car, they were saying 10 years from now, you know, Mike Spinelli, Mike Prichinello, and Zach Moseley talk about this car and say it's a sports car to buy. And I kind of thought that when we got our first one, we've had
This is our third.
Our third coupe, and we had apologies. We put a Roadster in there at one point, but people like convertibles. But
well, we'll have to talk about that in a minute. Yeah. You know, the differences between the driving differences between the Roadster and the coupe.
But that first one we got, when they were pretty new, I think 2008, we bought one that was leftover stock. And that summer, anytime it was near the door and I was heading somewhere, I'd grab the car. I absolutely loved it. And I was trying to put my thumb on what it was, but it's just this car that was a little bit wrong, a little bit extra dynamic because of it, and just so enjoyable to drive. You know, you could buy a Porsche Cayman, and it would probably do the same thing, nearly at the same level, maybe a little tighter. But there was something about this that was just so much more exciting.
Right. Well, so let's talk about the Z4 M Coupe in general. So the Z3 M Coupe was kind of a rogue project at BMW M. Some of the engineers got together and said, hey, yeah, we built this Roadster.
Check out this super ugly, awesome thing.
Well, it needs to be stiffer, so let's stick a roof on it. And they did this sort of awkward-looking thing. It looked like a clown shoe. That's how it, obviously got its nickname.
What do they call it in England? They call it, just talk about this. Here we call it the clown shoe. There they call it something else. I don't know.
So the Z3M went through 2 builds, had a cult following. Didn't sell a tremendous number.
Didn't make a lot of them, though.
They didn't make a lot of them, but it wasn't that kind of car. But they realized that, they're going into another generation. They can start from the ground up, design a brand new platform for it, and then, make it a car that maybe would sell in higher volume. And they built the Z4 M, and they didn't really sell that many of them, but it's a car that, is completely different than the Z3M. It's more refined. But looking at it 10 years on, it's not quite as dynamic and crazy as the first car, the Z3 M Coupe.
Right.
But it's got its own appeal now. And 10 years on, it's also depreciated to the level that people can afford, although it hasn't appreciated that much.
So much. Even when we did our last, so Z4 M Coupes have always been a top 5 car for me, or at least since they came out.
Yeah.
And when we did our last eBay challenge, I tried to find one when we gave ourselves 45,000.
Yeah.
And you could get, first of all, there weren't a lot to choose from. And one of them was automatic, which negates the whole purpose.
Right.
I didn't even know that you could have an automatic. I didn't know you could have an automatic Z4.
Did they make one? I know they made a regular
3.0
Z4.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
There was one, so someone had packed it
Emified.
up and emified it. But
Got it,
yeah, and it had the wood. Anyway, there's not a lot of them to find. But I've always liked that car because I feel like it's one of those cars that you really do feel what's going on. It has great communication, driver to road. I think you'd sit in the perfect driving seat in it. It's kind of weird. It's got that super long hood in front of you, but it kind of feels like when you're driving that the car rotates around your hips. Like you're the fulcrum in that car, and you don't get that in many cars. So if the back should start to move away from you, or at least I don't really drive like that, but when you feel that approach, you can feel it approaching. You can feel it happen. A lot of cars don't do that. The other thing about this car is during the era that it came out is when BMW started to throw a lot of electronics at cars. I think it was the era when most manufacturers started to really put a lot of electronic nannies in cars, and they were developing those systems. And
the computers were getting fast enough to make it possible that they weren't so intrusive.
Right. And then in that moment came that experience that I think every driver has had, which is I'm not like controlling, it's not doing everything I want it to do. And even if I turn those things down, the performance of the car is worse. It usually always is, right? And it's still there. Like I still can't get it to completely go away. And this car is, in a way, a rebuke to that, where it's really simple. It's rather analog compared to everything else that BMW made at the time.
Oh, it's also
so with that, great basis to start from.
Yeah, well, it's interesting that it hasn't really gotten a lot of respect, and I think part of it is that the design came at the end of that Bangle period, so it still has a little bit of the flame surfacing thing. Yeah, I mean, it looks like a GT car, right? Front engine, kind of short overhangs. It's a really nice base design. But then it's got that sort of bangly, sharky look that I think people didn't
personally, I really like it, but I find myself liking ugly cars. I don't know.
Well,
equal opportunist, I guess.
I've always thought they were pretty cool. I mean, it's that classic sports car thing: a long nose, it's low, you're sitting far back, and low to the ground. I've always thought they were pretty cool looking.
It looks like if like a 10-year-old car fan who was a good illustrator, that's what they would draw like in their notebook.
Yeah.
It would be, it's like flamboyant in all these different ways. And the back is this big,
Well,
so getting back to what the car actually is, I mean, especially in this era now where everything's getting digital and we're chasing, the best and the last of the analog cars. This, we've talked about the E90 M3 and things like that, but this really is the purest of the pure of the pure. Even when they had the 1 M Coupe, people wanted to say that was the E30 M3 over a time.
Right.
It wasn't. It had a turbocharged motor and whatever. This, last naturally aspirated 6-cylinder M motor. It is. I think it's one of the E30s of its era.
Well, it's funny because you mentioned that to me last night when we talked about this car, but I forgot that this was the last moment you could have gotten the E46 M3, the S54 motor.
Inline 6.
Inline 6,
3.2
high revving. It's
and
so
take
much.
A couple $100 off of what the M3 is that it was in.
Yeah.
And that's better.
Yeah, I mean, because at this point the M3 was a V8, right? So they were at the E92 at that point.
So let's talk about this specific one. And what makes it so good?
Yes. Okay. So we've all driven this. This is a club car, right? This belongs to Classic Car Club.
Classic Car Club, fleet car.
I drove it last night. We'll talk about our driving impressions, I guess, in a second. But I just want to say, baseline, if you've ever gotten in a tuner car and gone, oh, they wrecked it.
Yeah.
Totally not what this is.
Right.
So we totally have to talk about the tuning on this car because they nailed it, right? They nailed so many things. There's so many cool things about it that are right about the tune that actually enhance the car's natural dynamics equation.
Yeah, freed it up to be more of what it is without the burden of doing that.
Right. And I drove it partially in traffic in New York City, like the Bronx to Brooklyn run, which is really not great. And I didn't want to kill myself. So that's a whole other story. Yeah, so tell me about this car.
So it's a good balance. We actually got it from a gentleman who's now a member, but approached us with the car a few years ago and was thinking about selling it because it wasn't driving as much anymore and couldn't really settle on a price. And came back a few years later and he's moving to the city now and not going to have a garage for it. He says, I really want you guys to buy it and I also want to be a member and I want to be able to drive it as a member. So we worked out a deal, took it in. And like a lot of BMW owners, they're quite obsessive, and you could tell that he had researched every nut and bolt of how to make this car. It was built by a place called Speedware Motorworks in Redmond, Washington, and we'll post the specs on the list, but if you skim it, you'll find that there's a few key things for me. No internal changes to the motor, so they didn't mess with what BMW spent millions and millions of R&D developing and making perfect, and the last refinement of that theory in a BMW motor. anywhere where there is stuff, it's pretty well paired. So like, it's a UCC shifter and a UCC clutch and lightweight flywheel. And like, they're not mix and matching from everywhere. And not bench racing and saying I'm gonna get this and that. They kind of chose well-developed packages.
But systems
of things that work together. The suspension, and did the things that give you what you want out of it. You want to be able to adjust the suspension a bit more. You want to be able to dial in, a bit more camber and caster to get the steering feel where you want it to be. But don't just throw the stiffest thing you can get at it. And all that's just come together in a package that works really well. We did undo a couple things. He was running 19-inch wheels in the street, which I'm a big fan of throwing out big wheels and want to get the smallest wheel I can get around the brake rotors. We went back to the 18s that he had as track wheels. And we got rid of the solid and poly engine and transmission mounts, which translated all that vibration straight into the chassis. So we put back hydraulic mounts, smoothed it out, a little bit more livable with the road.
It was rough before that.
Yeah, before that.
We rattled the cold out of our chest.
Yeah.
It was good, like cold remedy.
Yeah.
But hard to drive.
But overall, just all really well-developed packages. That make,
Also put a real battery back in it.
Yeah, it had a motorcycle battery, so you had to jump it every time.
Yeah.
I think we could live with an extra 20 pounds in the back of the car.
Yeah.
I mean, so it was really a track day car before. It
Yeah.
wasn't something that.
This is something we have a lot of experience with too. We bought a 964, 911. That was someone
Back
had
when they
built
were-
into like
Back
sort
when
of
they
a
weren't
track
$1 billion,
car.
by the way.
Right. Yeah. I get. Yeah. That's why we still have it.
Right.
And Zach's very good at this. So as he said, sort of going through the list, like, oh, this is the best of this, and this is the best of this, and this is the best of this. And we knew this when we bought this car, that there was too many pieces on it that were taken away from the base level of how great that car is. And for the better part of a year, Zach unengineered a lot of it.
On the 964.
Yeah, on the 964.
Yeah. This car
That was a great
really
car,
close.
but this one came pretty damn close to it.
Yeah.
That's good. So what do we like about it with all the mods on it?
All right.
Right. I'll tell you a couple of things. Like, it has a lightened flywheel, but as we were talking about, it's not the lightest flywheel, so you don't have to keep it alive.
Right.
That engine is not known for gobs of torque. It's not what it's all about, but you could get off the line. I think if it was a lighter flywheel than that, it would just really bog down.
Well,
lower
especially
into it.
driving around the city, right? So you ever drive a car with a light flywheel through any
Yeah.
toll booth, right? So like, and you're just
Zing,
revving,
zing,
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 zing, zing,
zing,
zing,
zing.
zing, and like, all the cops are looking at you like, hey, come on, buddy.
It's a toll booth.
Yeah, it's a toll booth, not a freaking racetrack. But meanwhile, you have to do
Keep the
that.
momentum up,
I
yeah.
will say though, it's revs really, really well. I mean,
It does, it's
whatever amount
perfect.
of lightning just is perfect because
Perfect.
You just want to blip it all the time. And as you noted before, the pedal setup's really, really well. I mean, BMW has a gas pedal that drops down, at an angle below the brake, so you can properly heel toe and just get the whole thing going.
I had to
Yeah.
do that a lot on my weekend run with it to keep everything tidy, and it was very easy to do
So
in the wrong shoes.
Rev's great. There is a tune and there's stuff exterior to the motor, so it has a header and some intake work.
Look at this
and
list
a few
here.
things.
So you've got, so there are RPI intake scoops, Euro S54 headers, X-pipe, software flash.
Yeah.
So what's ever in that? So that's
knows?
an ESS.
It's good.
software
I will say it has a bit more bite than a stock Z4 M Coupe. It's not. It's fast. I mean, it's properly fast, but it's not one of those like where there's too much power right there and it's just snappy and it's it rocks on.
I will
hard.
say though, on the torque comment, as comparatively, I drove that car yesterday. I drove a Cayman GT4 here, which is another brilliant car. But back to back, that felt like a torque monster. Felt much more powerful. Even though I think this is more powerful in the end, but more the high revving pure motorsports end of it.
Right. I think that's where the tune comes in.
Yeah.
The lighter wheel and then the tune, and it just balances it out perfectly.
Right. So motor's great. No complaints about the motor.
Yep.
Right. Let's see. So transmit. Oh, the shift kit. You mentioned this a little bit.
Yeah.
I've never been a fan of that sort of BMW. A little bit rubbery.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
like,
it is rubbery.
It's like,
Yeah.
and I don't want to
It
say
goes
that 'cause
in
it
and then
sounds
in
like, it sounds
again.
like I'm being a jerk about it,
No,
but
no,
like it's not my favorite thing. But this shift kit, which is I don't even.
UCC, I think.
Yeah.
Or UUC? I don't know.
It's great.
Well,
There is
fine.
that feeling though in a stock BMW. We're like,
it's a
did I get it in
UUC.
gear?
Yeah,
Yeah,
Did
it's
it
a
happen?
UUC short shifter.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just kind of perfect.
It's a double click
Yeah.
in a way.
Yeah, sharp, mechanical. I mean, that's the thing with every aspect we touched in this car. Right? And the first car I really experienced this in was we got a 997 GT3. Like the best way I could describe it is it was like the car was made of harder metal. Like everything you touched just seemed that much more solid and connected.
Yeah.
And this does that really well. The shifter, the shift kit is a good one. It's not just something that makes it hard with the stubby shifter. It's all just right. And then the other bit is the steering wheel, which is stock, but this is like probably the most extreme BMW got with making really chubby steering wheels. They're like,
it's not heated, it's just
big,
stubby.
and you grab onto it like this. But something about that.
It has like those little trigger.
With the pretty heavy weight of the steering, the way you have bigger tires, more grip.
And this also has hydraulic assist.
Yeah.
It doesn't have the electric assist steering that BMWs of the era had.
So again, back to back, driving as much as I love the steering feel in the Cayman, it felt a little too light and delicate for how like purposeful I wanted the car to be compared to this.
Right. I mean, that steering wheel though is it's molded. It's not the straight thick one.
That was when you get the BMW, the heated steering wheel. Like
it's not where you're holding it up, and if you have, small hands,
and it's
or even if you have big hands, it just doesn't.
You got
it
those
doesn't feel
little
right.
hands. We just made it political.
That car's probably the furthest they've pushed that, and it still let it work.
Yeah.
So everything you touch is just so direct, and then it's translated through suspension that if you look at the list, they do all the normal stuff, a little stiffer, adjustable, whatever.
Yeah.
But big thing is adjustable control arms, so they dialed in the geometry right.
Well, so I mean, let's talk about that because. I mean, it turns out that we're talking about tuner cars a little bit more than just the Z4 M Coupe, right? Which on its own has a lot to love. Mm-hmm. But this is the conversation that started this show, is that we were talking about cars that make you love cars and love driving, right? And there's something about what they've done to this is that they've made it sharper. They've made it not only sharper, but also feel like a package of things that work together.
Right.
And also you smell gasoline.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like that's the thing like that you sort of miss, like the rich running, older, sports car motors.
Yeah.
Right? The smell of gasoline. And you forget that like if you drive a bunch of new cars, that's a small thing, but there's a kind of sensory.
It's another sense, right?
Yeah.
It's another sense. It sounds great too.
Yeah.
It's not too loud. I don't think it was too loud. I mean, it's
a little loud for my
loud.
neighbors.
Yeah. You gotta pull out of your house gently.
Yeah.
Respect the neighbors, I guess. But after that, like, it doesn't drone on the highway.
Yeah.
It kind of buzzes.
Well, sixes are hard to make sound great.
When you accelerate, it kind of comes on, and then you find neutral throttle, and then you could listen to the radio if you want. But when you're on you can hear the radio, but everything gets all shouty at you. Yeah. But once you get into your speed and you're cruising it, whatever it is, 70 miles an hour.
Yeah, there's sort of a weird, there's a point, I think it's like 2,800 RPM where the noise kind of goes away. There's some sort of weird modulation that happens that kind of.
A very small place that could be improved is maybe a resonator to get rid of that as you get on the throttle. It is there. I like it.
Yeah.
I don't know, I like it.
I will say a couple tunnel runs though, it does make pretty exotic sounds when you get into higher revs, for a straight six BMW, it sounds
like
special.
I know everybody says angry. It does sound angry though. It sounds like
Angry bees.
like you're torturing something. Not in a bad way.
Right.
Like,
not torturing in a bad way. Good torture.
Positive torture.
Fun torture.
Yeah. So it does sound. It sounds a bit of a demon.
The thing that, so a couple of things to watch, right? And I don't want to say negatives, but just things that you have to consider while you're driving this thing is quick hands, right? And the thing about having quick hands is that a lot of it is muscle memory. And so, if you've driven cars that
you can catch it.
You can catch it. If you've driven cars that needed to be caught, and you forget, like your brain it's driving is as much your brain kind of learning things in the background as it is like you learning things in the foreground.
You feel it in the seat, you're feeling all that stuff, and you're collecting data.
Right.
Just trying to collect as much data as you can.
But things happen quick, and I'm wondering, like driving this on either a racetrack or hopefully a really wide patch of tarmac where you can kind of see how it breaks away. I'm interested to see like how quickly it breaks. Yeah.
I just guessing because driving around Manhattan, I wasn't especially those tires, so much grip, I wasn't cutting the back end loose. But I think it would be pretty intuitive because your ass is nearly on the rear axle.
Right.
Yeah.
So whenever people talk about that feeling, you really almost have it physically that you're right there.
Yeah.
And when I was saying it rotates from your hips. Like
Right.
you feel it coming, and I think your position in a car, like Zach was saying, is you can correct it pretty quick. Like you're on the fulcrum of it. I've never been in a car where you're on the fulcrum of where it's going to.
And I would say
Pivot point,
again,
I
without
guess.
having driven on track yet, what's apparent without driving on track is that the way they set the car up, it's got KW adjustable suspension. You can adjust a million different ways, and you can buy all these parts, catalog shop, buy all the best stuff that you've read on forums, put it in your car, and it can come out terribly. But what's evident here is they spent time sorting this car out on a track and adjusting stuff, not only in stiffness and dampening, but geometry. They were probably playing with adjustable sway bars and a little bit more camber, a little less, whatever, and just getting it to where it felt right.
Yeah.
And while we're not at the limit to experience how predictable that all works, then you feel it in the way the car behaves just in turn in and whatever on the road.
Yeah. Pilot Sport Cup tires, right?
Yeah.
Are they Cup tires? Or
No,
they're just regular tires.
Pilot Sports.
Regular
Yeah.
Pilot Sports,
Yeah.
which are great all around. Summer. I mean, they're not great in the early spring or late winter in New York, but they're okay. They're not bad.
Yeah.
This weekend I drove that car probably 500 miles, and I went up to the Adirondacks with it because the roads up there are state maintained, and they just wind through the mountains. They're wide. There's nobody ever on them. But it was also 5 degrees out, which is nerve-wracking, right?
Yeah.
Because you're not going to get a lot of grip out of them. I was on the B roads. The C roads were a mess. They were
Yeah.
sort of salty and muddy and all that. But even in those conditions, dry roads, but very, very cold and wet in some places, it still produced a lot of grip. You just had to be really gentle with it.
Yeah.
And one of the things I loved about driving it was the throttle response. You could just sort of get on it and just be very gentle, and you hear it wind up, and the speed comes. But it always was just happy if you were really gentle and precise with it. Like hardly any inputs on the steering wheel. Most of my braking was done just by turning the wheel and letting the front wheels, scrub some of the speed off.
Yeah. And the third gear pull, that car pulls really hard.
It
in
does.
third gear. So you sort of have to be careful.
Well, see, in those conditions, when I was driving, like here, just trying to not throw it any sort of weight or torque into it at all. Just
Keep it in tension so you have control.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I was mostly in third and fourth, and even just only doing my shifting in a straight line, and then using the throttle through the corner just to keep the rear behind you, which is an important thing I think in a car like that.
Yeah.
Just a little bit of positive throttle through the corner once you could open your hands up.
Yeah.
But I guess the point of all that is that I've been, we're really privileged to drive all these great cars. It's our job, and to buy them and live with them, and that could also make you a bit jaded from time to time. Like, oh, the 570S was just so much better than a car. It gets wanky like that after a while. But that made me fall in love with driving again. Like I was out all day long freezing in that car, absolutely freezing.
And you're bringing it full circle.
Yeah, and it made it. I brought my brother-in-law out, who's a real keen driver and a car guy. He's a drag racer. We've talked about him. He's got lifts in his garage, and I took him for a ride, and he goes, "This is like the best sports car I've ever driven," which was kind of telling because with all that go fast race stuff on it, most people say this is a great track car, but he just described it as an excellent sports car. It just did everything you wanted it to do so well, and you didn't have to live with maybe a bit of a buzzy exhaust, but other than that, you don't have to live with any inconveniences. Yeah. I even find the seats in it, those Recaro race seats in it, they're actually a touch too big for me. That never happens. Usually you're always in a minute.
Yeah.
My only complaint is I did drive it for 9 hours in one day, and my ass really hurt. Yeah. I was just hoping, I was at the gas station, I was like, maybe they have a pillow I could buy and put under this.
That's your problem.
Yeah, it's my bony ass.
That's what it is. I mean, there's pasta for that.
So,
So I was in Utica. There is pasta.
That's right.
So if we put this all into context, so I know finding a Z4 M Coupe is a little hard now. There's not a lot out there. But still, if you do, market should be in the mid-20s, at least as of this moment right now. I know after this show, call it 50 grand. But yeah, mid-20s. Yeah. And modifications largely don't translate into much value. So if you were to find one like this, which I knew of 2 of them, there's probably another 4 in the US that are set up like this. It's not something you see a lot of. it's probably only worth like low 30s, you know?
Yeah.
So where does that put it with other cars? And,
Well, I mean, we're not, you know, that's the thing is like, that's our pick
Yeah.
for the 10-year-old car. What's your pick?
Yeah.
It's my pick for the new car, though.
Yeah, well, that's right.
Like Zach was saying, listen, GT4. GT4 is an amazing.
Yeah.
Porsche Cayman GT4 is a great car on
which I
every
drove
level.
here today, just
That's
because
right.
I had it on my mind after driving that car.
Yeah.
yesterday.
Rather have this.
Wow.
Yeah.
See, there you go. You don't have to spend $100,000 on a brand new Porsche. You can buy a 10-year-old car for 25 grand or so, and then over time you could tune it, you know, make it your project, and hopefully get it to somewhere like this.
We'll list the modifications on this car.
Yeah, we'll put the modifications in the info sheet below.
Yeah,
there you go. So that's our pick. What's your pick for best 10-year-old car to buy? Best 10-year-old sports car, obviously. I mean, if you want to put SUVs in there, I mean, I don't know why you would, but so yeah, I don't want to limit anybody. This is our pick. What's yours? Put it in the comments below. And of course, as a side comment, what's a car that reignited your love of driving? That's kind of the softer, more touchy-feely version of this. Well, that's After Drive for today. I'm Mike Spinelli. This is Mike and Zach from Classic Car Club Manhattan. Thanks for bringing in the 2007 Z4 M modified as it is. And we'll see you guys on another After Drive pretty soon.